For our audience, would you mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Okay, my name is Vanessa Dooley. I am the founder, I don't like the word director, but founder of Jigsaw Early Years Consultancy, and we've been going for 8 years. Background really is I used to be an inspector and set up my consultancy, and now it's helping settings that add impact into the sector, basically into their setting, yeah.
How do you encourage practitioners to move beyond anxiety and see inspections as opportunities for growth?
Okay, so we've changed our remit from when we first started, where we're doing this, and now it's all about what we say is shining and not shying away. And it's really important that when settings have an inspection, it's almost they want to say, come on in, come and see what we do and showcase it. And because then that gives you that little bit more confidence to actually showcase what you do. And sometimes this is where the anxiety comes in, and we want to make sure that actually settings are able to demonstrate what they do well, and also not demonstrate what they don't do well, but recognise what they don't do well and turn it and go, we recognise this and this is what we've changed.
Yeah.
That's important.
Absolutely, because I still tend to find, I think the work that you do is incredibly important, by the way, because I do still find that an inspection is perhaps the single most stress and anxiety inducing event that sweeps across a whole setting, or at that given time or moment that once you know that inspection is coming or happening.
Yeah.
So I think that's incredible what you guys do. Now, confidence and the idea of swagger are things that you do often mention. What small changes or realizations have you seen make the biggest impact on a setting's ability to showcase its strengths?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is getting everybody on board. If you don't get everybody on board, and that starts with obviously the management team going down to the apprentice, also including the cover staff, or maybe if you have, ongoing agency staff, you have to get everybody on board. And if you don't get everybody on board, and I don't really want to say singing from the same hymn sheet, but I will say it, because actually if you don't all do that, then actually the day is not going to go the way that it needs to go. So I think the important thing and the small changes would be to get everybody on board and not realise that it's just a manager's role or an owner's role. It's not. It's everybody. And if you've got everybody on board, it just gives a different vibe, and that helps with the shining.
So given your experience in both inspections and consulting, what do you think is often misunderstood about the role of inspections in early years education, and how can practitioners reshape their approach to this process?
Yeah, I think we do need in the sector somebody to inspect. I do think we need that. We need that accountability. But I think we need to be showing how we can do it in a better way and make it more collaborative maybe. And also maybe I would say do it more often.
Yeah,
because that actually, the frequency, the consistency of it is going to help, because then it's not such a great big shock. And then the anxiety is not going to kick in because you know it happens on a regular basis.
We see this ourselves actually, the infrequent nature of inspections now. One, it does, I think, it heightens the level of anxiety because you're not conditioned to it.
Yeah.
But two, you get settings that, and settings often go through a lot of change over a short period of time.
Totally.
So you get settings that perhaps are good or outstanding, and they're doing things really, really well in that moment. And then 3, 4, 5 years down the line, they get re-inspected and they're not quite as good or as outstanding as they were back then. And it's kind of that frequency point, I think, is really interesting one, because it will help settings maintain the level of quality, I think. It's not that they don't want to,
No.
It's just that the way things change over time can be quite...
And also what happens is they become complacent. Settings become complacent and think, oh, no, it's fine.
Yes.
No, it's fine. But actually it's not fine. And so if we had that little bit more collaborative, and I know that's what they're trying to do, it's just going to take a little bit longer than we anticipated. But I think if we had it more frequent, it would And I know that because when we have our inspection hub, our members on the inspection hub say if it was more frequent than the, 5 years, 10 months or whatever it is, it wouldn't be so anxious and the anxiety wouldn't be raised because it's ongoing.
And to some extent, you probably end up building a quite a strong collaborative familiarity with your local or routine inspectors as well. So they get to know you on your best and sometimes not your so best days.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We used to have it in the local authorities, didn't we?
Yeah.
Many years ago. And actually, your daycare officer used to come in on a yearly visit, or you could ring her up and go, can you just clarify this with me? And that would be fine. But we don't have that. And I think there's a missed opportunity there to support our sector.
Yeah, it's almost like you need maybe like a dedicated local workforce that maybe go out one-to-one and just have sort of half-hour conversations. Just
we get it started.
Making a check-in. Yeah, that'd be awesome. That would
be amazing. Me too. Yeah, really do. Yeah, I think it's great.
I think and great for sort of removing the element of isolation. I think that often practitioners can feel.
Yeah. And it's always, anxious and anxiety. And when we go out and do our audits, that's what we try and get across. Is like, you need to shine and talk about. Don't not make eye contact.
Yeah.
Say to the inspector, I want you to see what I'm doing. I want you to see this little one's was here. Look where they are now. And we did this to get that.
Yeah.
That's what you want, rather than when an inspector walks in a room and looking away and thinking, I don't want to make eye contact with them.
Yeah, because I imagine if you're lower on confidence, you're more or less reacting to the inspector's Q&A as opposed to leading the journey that you're taking that inspector on.
Yeah. And it's having that confidence to say, well, actually, I don't know. I know what the answer is, but I just need to go and find it. Can you give me 5 minutes so I can go and find it? But we don't do that, and that's what we should be doing. Yeah. And
there should be an allowance for that as well, I think. Knowing that knowing that a fundamental is important, but also just knowing that general knowledge exists or general practice exists. You might not be as familiar with it, or it might be totally ingrained in your person, but actually to be able to acknowledge its existence and go, and I know where to find that.
Yeah.
And I can show you where I've used it.
Yeah.
As well, but to be able to do that and have that with that degree of acceptance and understanding that's how people are as well. Totally. Yeah. So you've carved out a real niche in your consultancy and you're focusing on practical guidance for early years settings. How do you help the leaders and the teams discover what makes them stand out, especially when they're under pressure?
I think what settings do is they look too much at what everyone else does. And I think maybe if they focused on what they did and stayed in their lane and focused what they did well at, then actually that would grow and actually that story would be better because then they could showcase that story. Yeah.
I really agree with that.
Yeah, I think there's too much competition out there and everyone looks and just thinks, well, actually, they're doing that down the road. I need to copy that. No, you don't. You need to just focus on what you do. Yeah.
I think when you're more focused on you, you're more focused perhaps on better outcomes overall. Again, worrying about what someone else is doing, like down the postcode or down the road is it's important to be aware. But I think focusing on yourself is a really cool message. Yeah. Celebrate your differences.
Totally, and we're all unique. And I always say this. When I wrote the book, it's like every child's unique, every setting's unique, and I even put every inspector's unique. So actually, we've all got to make sure that we celebrate that, how unique we are. We're all unique. You're doing something which someone else is doing, but you've got to focus on what you're doing. Exactly with me, there's so many consultants out there, but you have to focus on what you do.
You do. Yeah, absolutely. So looking ahead, how do you see the relationship between regulatory bodies and early years providers changing? And what advice would you offer to practitioners about navigating these changes?
I'd like to see the positive changes come in a little bit more quickly than what I foresee them coming in. But that's not that's not something I can change. But I think if we, we're doing it slowly, especially since January, we're doing the whole thing about the well-being, and that's good. That's what we needed to do. But there are so many more things that we need to ensure that we are doing, that I think if there was one thing I could do and is actually encourage every practitioner to be confident, and I know it's hard, and it's easy for me to come out of my mouth because I've been doing this for years. I understand that, but it also starts from the top. So if the manager's anxious, it's going to make the staff anxious. So we've got to turn that around and go. And I always say that when an inspector knocks on the door, whether it's a compliance visit or whether it's a regular, an inspection, is you as that person that opens the door that says, come on in, I've been waiting for you. Let me show you what we do. And if we can get that remit, if we can turn our brain, it's almost reframing our brain, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, that's what we need to be thinking about. And that would be one piece of advice that I would love to get people to go. Do you know what? We need to go. Come on in.
Yeah, and it's sort of so at some stage you discovered that in yourself, and the empowerment that's followed. I think I reflect on this, your journey and your message, and on that particular point.
Yeah.
It makes me think again, reflecting on myself, and actually people I'm familiar with, or I know. You can see that turning point in people, and once they connect with, there's something exciting, thrilling about that moment where you are a bit anxious to step out, but in doing so, the results come. And it doesn't, you never get everything 100% right.
No.
So you've got to kind of just give yourself that, I accept that it's not going to be perfect, but what I can see is it makes such a much bigger difference.
And that's the whole point. It's all about adding impact, isn't it? That's what we want to do, is add impact into the sector, add impact into those children's lives. That's what we need to be doing. We can't add impact if we're anxious and we're stressed.
Yeah.
Just like a parent can't do that with a baby. If they're stressed, that baby's going to be anxious too. So actually it's exactly the same. You just literally got to start from the top.